opportunity to be here. First of all, he mentioned I am the boys coach at Naperville North. I know our girls program. Hopefully, you're interested in what I'm going to say. Our girls program is phenomenal. And I saw someone from, is it Pleasant Valley? Our Naperville North girls program runs there every year and really enjoys that meet. And so if you ever have any questions about the girls program, I'm not offended. We work really close together. In the summertime, our boys and girls do everything together, and Coach Iverson does such a great job, and we're really good friends. And we have a very, very similar philosophy. Sometimes the application's a little bit different for various reasons, but our philosophy is very closely linked, and they've had just great success. If you've been to that meet, you've seen their girls team, and I am excited to watch them run tomorrow afternoon at the NXN meet. So if you ever have any questions about them, like I said, we work together, and the stuff I'm going to talk about, I do think it applies to guys and girls, and maybe the middle school or your slow kids, your faster kids, whatever. At Naperville North, it's a school with 3,100 students, and the good thing about it, selfishly, is that as a PE teacher, I primarily just teach fitness classes, so that when I get some ideas, I always try it out and use my PE classes as guinea pigs before I experiment with the athletes. That's a great thing about being at a large school. Sometimes when you go to presentations, I've been there, and coaches talk about, well, I have this and I have that, and we can do this and we can do that. And I would sit there and go, well, I can't do that. Our weight room's terrible, or this is bad, or that's bad, our weather's bad, or this and that. I understand that. Because before Naperville, I grew up in central Illinois, close to Springfield, at a small school. That's where I ran. That's where I coached. When I was a freshman in high school, first time going to the Illinois State cross-country meet, that's when I knew I wanted to be a coach, and my dream was to coach my high school, Jacksonville High School, to a state title. So my whole beginning as a coach and thinking about distance running, my mindset was always, all right, I got to get five good guys and 5 good girls, and we're working with guys and girls, and I got to get junior high kids involved, and I even want to do things to get grade school kids involved. And even though I've been at Naperville North I've been their cross-country coach for 20 years, that mentality has never left me. So, so I always think about that a lot, more so than I should. And my colleagues that I work with make fun of me for, why don't you just go back to Central Illinois? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? So that's always my thought process. A couple other things. Later on tonight at 8:20, we're doing a power hour, is what it says on the thing. And because I teach fitness classes, I'll show some videos. And what I'd like to have is some learn by doing. And this is the room that we're in. And I know it's not going to work so well, but 1, 2, 3, 4, probably if I get like 5 or 6 volunteers, and I can put you through certain things. And if you volunteer to help me, I have all kinds of Naperville North freebies to give you. So anybody that wants to do something or wants to help me out, I will do as much as I can. But if I can have people help me, look at that one. If I can have people help me, I'll give you free stuff. It always works with the kids. If I give the kids free stuff, they'll do almost anything. So later on, the second session, instead of listening to me talk at 8:20 at night from being here all day, hopefully if I can get people to volunteer and help me out with that, I would greatly appreciate it. So hopefully you can learn more and get ideas of what fitness or power things, ideas that you can help apply to your program. One thing, some of the stuff that I use a lot, I'm such a huge fan of Joe Vigil, and I saw out in the hallway they have a thing with Will Freeman and Joe Vigil and Vern Gambetta. That's phenomenal. Last year I went to the one at Grinnell. I'm sure a lot of you did also. So if you can go to that. So I'll quote Joe Vigil, and then I'll quote Vern Gambetta and the fitness one. So that's something awesome as well. Okay, so let me get started. I'll try to. Okay. The goal with all of our training is to try to increase the volume of quality work. Similar to if I'm teaching someone to serve a serve in tennis or learning how to teach someone to shoot a basket, you start close and move back. So if you're trying to get someone to break 5 minutes in the mile, obviously they can run that pace through 400 meters, 800 meters, maybe even 1,200 meters. It's that last little bit. And look at training as trying to increase the volume of quality work. So we're always trying to run farther, and we're always trying to run faster. So that's the concept of what we're always trying to do. And kids in my PE class, distance running, I hate it. It's no good. It's boring. I said, no, it's not. I go, if you think of it as you're trying to run as fast as you possibly can for 800-mile cross country, if that's your mindset, then it's not a boring thing. It's not a slow thing. It's a challenging, aggressive, positive thing. Trying to run as fast and far as you possibly can. And we try to mold our training so that's the kid's mindset of increasing the volume of quality work. Okay? This is from Joe Vigil. I need to give him credit. Obviously, we have more talented kids that can run faster, and the quality and quantity of work that they can carry out. And again, straight from Joe Vigil. And so the idea is the more we can work, and again, the faster we can do it, the better the runners are. Okay? And then this is the Joe Vigil thing. This is directly. So the greater the demand placed on an individual within its physiological and psychological limits, the more they can adapt and the more efficient they become. And then tomorrow I will talk about the psychological. I will talk a lot more about that, but the physiological also. So the harder we can work them without breaking them down, the better they get. Very simple. So therefore, in our training, we look at our training schedule. I look at my track season this year coming up. We have 4 Tuesday meets, and then 1 week with no weekday meet, and then conference, sectional, state. So the best workout is a race. So if you're in a situation like I am, where the conference rules say we have to run 4 Tuesdays in a row, or we have an indoor conference meet, or whatever the case may be, we use that as an opportunity to make your athletes better, instead of, oh, I hate this, this stinks, I don't want to do this now, whatever the case may be, and let the kids know that from a physiological and a psychological concept, best workout's a race. So they need more speed. My 2-milers, when we run those 4 Tuesday meets, we have an all distance 4x4 challenge, and we make up this huge. There's this huge trophy. It's like a traveling trophy amongst all the distance guys that run 4x4s. So we're working on those Tuesday meets. Or if you have an 800-mile kid, run them longer. Okay, that's the best. That's the best thing they do. Now, with our training, one thing that does bother me still, is that in the summer, we like to do, we build up with the guys and girls on Mondays. We do 10-mile runs, and me and Dan, the girls' coach, finally talked about it. And it was terrible that you'd have guys run 60 minutes, and some of those girls are so good, and they're running 70 minutes for 10 miles. But then you have some kids, it seemed almost criminal to me to have kids go 85, 90 minutes for a run, and those are your slower kids. So we've shifted most everything as far as distance goes. I do everything in minutes, not miles, because I don't think the slower kids should run longer. As they get better, as they progress through 4 years or 6 years of training, or however long that is, again, they become more fit. They run longer. If we're doing a 60-minute run this year, 7 miles, maybe next year they're 7.5, 7.75 miles, whatever the case may be. But they are getting better, so they're running farther within that same time frame. So I personally like doing everything in minutes, and we do that for my boys team for all 4 years. And my smart GPS kids in Naperville, they use Google Earth. Some of them that are really anal have to do miles, and that's so long as it's 60 minutes and they know their mileage, I'm okay with that. But a couple years ago, those kids, I've asked them to record everything, and amongst the same time schedule, it's interesting that their progression mileage worked out pretty well as far as exactly what you would like, textbook, what you would like as a runner. So I like doing things in minutes, not miles. I like doing lots of fartlek work, lots of tempo. So same thing. If we're doing a 6x3 minute fartlek, if your really good guys are a little bit less than 1,000 meters, and then your younger guys, I don't know, 600 meters, whatever the case may be, but you're controlling the rest. So I can't stress enough when appropriate, and there is a place during track to do distance. So not every. So I guess I'm a hypocrite a little bit in that generally, as far as the number of miles run, I like minutes, but we definitely do track workouts and threshold workouts where it is a specific distance. So I say this, and then I show you something different. I realize that. Okay. Again, the idea, I just mentioned that, the idea is to try to control the recovery of what we're doing. Hopefully a short story. Again, back where I came from, we had high school boys and girls and junior high boys and girls all working out at the same time. And what would happen is that your training became dictated to the slowest kids. So we're doing repeat 800s, and the slowest kids are getting 2 or 3 minutes rest, where our faster kids are getting, just an ungodly amount of rest. It's awful. So the workout was different. We made the workout for the slower kids, and the longer kids had so much rest that their intervals were really fast. And the result was we were running really well early season, and then we would kind of putter out. And through making those mistakes, again, thinking about minutes, we control the recovery, and the kids can progress throughout. Okay? Again, in minutes, I'll talk about the long run in a little bit. I've got a lot here. Hopefully I can get through all of it. On every Monday in cross country, we call it 100 minutes of work. And you can modify this however. So my real good varsity guys that are trained, that are in shape, they're doing a 90-minute run, and then they come back and they do 10 100-meter strides where they start on the minute. That's their 90 minutes of work. Now, I would not make a freshman or a sophomore through senior who's not in shape do that. That would be awful. That'd be terrible as a coach. But what we do is, since I consider myself kind of a fitness guy as much as a running guy, is I think that have not done a whole lot of running, you do more fitness and less running. And as the running fitness improves, you can kind of go the other way a little bit. So kids that are not in shape, kids that don't run in the summer, especially in the wintertime now, it's awful, where we all exercise less in the wintertime just because how our weather is. So anyway, I would never make kids that are not in shape or kids that are not physically developed or multi-sport kids, which I'll talk about a little bit later, make them do 90 minutes of running. So like I said, sophomores, seniors, 20 minutes of fitness, 60-minute run, 20, freshmen, 30, 40, 30. Okay? So they're still doing 100 minutes of work. And there's 3 groups, and obviously it's the coach's responsibility to modify those things. And what will happen is a lot of the kids will say, Coach, I want to run more, I want to run more, I want to run more. And then that's our job to know our athletes and know if they are ready to do that sort of thing. Our cross-country team started with 100 boys, finished with 73, because they're not so dedicated. And then there was 2 coaches with us. Speaking of our girls program, they were similar, and they ended up they had like 5 coaches, and 3 of them were volunteers, so they were able to do different things from a training standpoint. Like they got into deadlifting. Again, I'll talk about that with the fitness stuff, but depending on your facilities and how many coaches you have and how many kids you have, you can have a similar philosophy, but we apply it in different ways. Okay, so here's an example workout that I like doing, and I like to make everything really positive. And one of the things with this talk I wanted to do was a lot of times theory, application, or theory, science, so on and so forth. But I've left. All right, now what workout should I do? I understand what you're saying, but give me a workout. So I want to give you a workout. So here's a workout. Everybody does 30 minutes. One set is 3 300s with a 100 jog in between, and then a 400 jog in between sets. So 30 minutes, ready, set, go, and the kids count how many 300s they do, and that motivates them. They want to do more, and typically when we do something like this, anything like this, I try to do twice a season, so that they have an A test and a B test. And again, if they're your fastest kid or slowest kid or whatever, if they can see improvement, that's positive, and that motivates our athletes. So there's an example workout of what we do, and it's all in time. Warming up. the objective is to engage the brain. And another class I teach, or did teach, and they just got rid of it, was called Learning Readiness PE. And it's all based on the brain. And I don't know if a lot of you are interested in that kind of thing, but if you are, Dr. Maffetone, if you've heard of him, there are podcasts. I listen to a podcast in my 6-hour drive here from Naperville. It's awesome how the brain tells the body what to do. And then some of you probably know Brain Training for Runners, great book by Matt Fitzgerald. But anyway, when we do something, and I was sitting in the long jump presentation last, and he was talking about, the brain tells the body to do this and this, or whatever the case may be. With our distance runners, it's the same thing. So a warm-up isn't static stretching. A warm-up isn't only slow jogging. There is definitely a place for slow jogging, but if you're not mentally engaged in the activity, you're not warmed up because the brain tells the body what to do. And if we have not worked on it, if that movement has not worked on our flexibility, has not raised our heart rate, has not overloaded the joints, so there's a little strength component to it, our athletes are not ready to go. Okay? So we always do something where we try to challenge their mind. One of my best friends is our sprint coach. And last year at this time, he did so much work on all these run drills and everything. And then the season starts, and it was a flop because the kids didn't pay attention. They were doing it, but they were just gabbing the whole time. And it never worked because they weren't mentally engaged in what they were doing. So he had to get to the point where he and I'll have this later on if you come tonight, they had to do run drills with a medicine ball in their hand. So they had something they had to focus on. So they had to do that. So all the time, do something that's a little bit of a challenge that gets their brain ready to go. Okay? So, and this is the only thing I'll ask the group to do. If everybody can stand up, please. I'll show you really quick. Hopefully, don't hit each other. This is awesome. There's so many people here. Anyway, something as simple as this, and I'll talk about the school day. Arms up, and maybe you do. I'm sure most of you know, or a lot of you know this stuff. And all I want you to do is go right arm forward, left arm backwards. Do it. Right forward, left back. Okay, and then come up. And then other way, left forward, right back. That's easier. Uh-oh. Okay, right? And then have a seat. Now, again, the brain-based learning, again, if I was home and it was summertime, I'd be taking a nap right now. And it's a longer day. So, and when our kids sit in school all day, they come to practice. If we're just jogging, again, there's a place for that, but they're not ready to go. So even doing something as simple as this, all right, I watched all of you, and a lot of you were, this or this, but then I could see it in your faces because I was watching you, or I could see it in your faces where you're like, okay, you were thinking about it, and then you were able to get it. So maybe you couldn't get it initially, but then you could. All right, so you can start there, and then you can start skipping. You can walk, you can jog, you can do a karaoke, you can do whatever. But the brain is then engaged, and the brain tells the body what to do. So we're waking up all of these muscles. Our heart rate is elevated, and if I'm doing this in a run drill, again, getting back to run drills, it's like a lower level plyometric. So we are waking things up and getting things ready to go, and then. Okay, and then the quality of our work is better, and I mentioned all that. And flexibility, strength, all of that is enhanced. Okay, and what we do is, I like long. I almost don't like the word warm up. I almost consider it workout time. As soon as we can, we go right from that into whatever we're doing, even if it's like the sophomore through seniors. Excuse me. On the earlier thing, they're doing 20 minutes of stuff like that, and then they immediately go in the run. So the bathroom and the water and all that stuff, unless they're hurt, you got to get that done before practice because I want to get you going. Because if I get you up 15, 20 minutes where we've activated your muscles, we've raised your heart rate. So if I do 15, let's say I do 15 minutes of that, and then I get you out on your 45-minute run, there's an hour of work. And again, the objective is to increase the volume of quality work. And I consider that warm-up quality work. So if I do 15 minutes, get a drink, wait 10 minutes for my friend because he's got to go to the bathroom and she's got to get her shoes and whatever the case may be, we've got our 15 minutes, but then the training effect kind of comes down and then we go on our run. So I like getting them right out there. And I like research, and I love doing science stuff like that. And again, my guys that have the heart rate monitors and the GPS heart rate monitor guys, that's what I call them, I have them record things for my own selfish benefit. And I have found that instead of just saying, go run for an hour, okay, they go run for an hour and they run at a certain heart rate, they tell me how far they run. Okay, we do a warm-up similar or different or whatever kind of warm-up, and then they do the same 60-minute run or whatever the run is, they run farther and faster at the same heart rate. So again, we are increasing the volume of quality work by waking things up. It's like turning on all the lights in your house. You know, we use more energy. We wake things up. We're ready to go. So hopefully I haven't talked about that, but I can't stress that enough. The importance of doing that. Okay, here's an example. They've got mini bands on their feet too. So mini bands, med ball. It's flexibility, it's strength, it's cardio. Hopefully you all can see this. There's a coordination piece to that also. You know, that's why sprinters are better dancers than distance runners. They're coordinated. They have agility. So we do a set of stuff like that. I'm going to do that. I'll show you some of that tonight. And then you got to go run right away. Or that's it. Oh no. Apologize. I lost my place here. Okay. So this is my favorite warm-up. 5-minute jog, 5 minutes of crawling, which you'll see tonight. It's on the other sheets. And that's what those kids did. 5 minutes of strides where they go around the track. Maybe they jog the curves, stride the straights. 5 minutes of mini band work, and I'll do mini bands tonight. 5-minute tempo run. And the really good kids, they're loose, they feel good. And my varsity guys, you know, they'll run close to a 5-minute mile in that. And then 5 minutes of run drills. So they're sweating, then we do run drills. So there's a 30-minute warm-up. And then below that, once a week we do a 1-hour workout of that where we'll go through that twice. And that's our morning workout. Right? Because our school day is 7:45 to 3:10. We do that from 6 to 7. They come back after school. We do a threshold workout. And even though that hour was done a long time ago, we come back, they feel good, they feel loose, and we're getting more quality work. And they feel good. They're sweating, but they really feel good doing that, especially if we go through it twice. Or sometimes we'll go through it once, depending on what we're doing. So, again, I can't stress that enough. All right. The other concept, we're only as strong as our weakest link. I think, you know, so whatever your athlete's weaknesses are, we constantly have to work on that. I think the next thing, allergy shots. The concept, I call it allergy shots. Some of you might be like, I don't even know if they do it anymore, but when I was a kid, I had a bunch of allergies. I don't know, it's because I lived next to a cornfield and we had a cat in our house or whatever the case may be. And you had to get all those pricks. And then, anybody ever do that? And then, you know, you find out what swells and you find out what you're allergic to. And the concept is building a tolerance to whatever your body, whatever you're not good at. So I was allergic to cats and cornfields or something where I grew up. And so every week I would go in and get shots for that. Okay? So I call this concept allergy shots. So you find out what your kid's weaknesses are, and they're all different. So you got to give them small doses. So if a kid is not flexible, I'm really big into yoga. I'll talk about that later. They got to work on flexibility. If they're not very strong, we work on that. If they don't have much speed, you know, there's a lot of different ways to work on that. If it's a kid that's a really good athlete but doesn't have much endurance base, we work on that. So small doses, especially early in the season. If you overdose on whatever your weakness is, you take away from what your strength is. So really small doses. And again, giving proper time and recovery, the body will recover. And I put Anna Reno right there. One of my former athletes, I did that just for my sake. he's the exception where, well, he's a different exception where multi-sport kids, again, our school is awful about specialization. And I don't know if you have that at your school where the basketball coach doesn't want kids to run. The football coach, we have illegal football practice in the spring, and there's all that stuff going on. You might have similar things, but this kid was an all-state soccer player, and he ran 51 seconds in the 400, and he wanted to run a mile. So I had to find out what his weakness was, all right? And then, so sending him out on 90-minute runs would not be such a good move, all right? But then we sat down and talked, what position do you play? I play left back in soccer. What do you do when you play soccer? Well, I walk, and then I sprint, and then I jog. So I'm like, so you never do anything kind of halfway? No, it's either I'm either walking or sprinting, walking, sprinting, walking, sprinting. So what we figured out, junior year, I messed it up and tried to make him more of a distance guy, and that blew up in my face. But then we figured it out for his senior year. He had not done, and I'll talk about threshold work in a little bit, but he had not done any threshold work because he's been a soccer player all his life. So everything's walk, sprint, walk, sprint, walk, sprint, sprint, walk, sprint, walk, sprint. So his whole senior track year, because of our 4 Tuesday track meets, what we did was, or we would do a threshold run, and then maybe he'd run the 400 in the Tuesday meets. So so we really didn't even get to the point where we were doing speed work with him, because he was in great shape. He had good natural speed. He's a really good athlete. So we did threshold work all the way through. So once a week, we did a 20-minute tempo, then we did a fartlek, 20-minute tempo, fartlek, and coaching friends of mine thought I was crazy, but that was the element that he was working, that he was lacking. So junior year, he was like 424 or something. Senior year, 414, just by doing lots of threshold work because that was his weakness and trying to work on that specific weakness. Okay, so I guess follow up. How can we expect our athletes to run a certain way if we never practice the way we want them to race? So we have to practice the way we want our kids to compete. So, a kid runs a certain way, we're upset with them, and they don't do it. There's a lot of variables to that, but in the end, as coaches, is it really the kid's fault if we don't practice the way we want them to race? Okay? Have runners do workouts that simulate that, and I have lots of examples there for each thing, and it's in the notes, but lots of different workouts. The top one in cross country, it's based on the Illinois State cross country course. I think a couple Iowa schools run in Peoria. And what happens in Peoria is that I think this year there were 179 kids that broke 5 minutes the first mile. There's a little downhill, but about 179 broke the mile, or broke 5 minutes in the mile, but only 9 did it in the second mile at the Illinois State meet. It's go crazy time, and it's flat, if you've ever been there. So what we wanted to do, what was important was we practiced the way that you need to run the Illinois State meet. And Dan Iverson, our girls coach, has done a wonderful job with that. And his background with that, because he ran at North Central College. If you ran Division III, or if you're a running fan, North Central College historically, that's kind of what they do. They get out smart and they move. So you got to practice that. So we do a 6-minute tempo run because the state course, there's an open area and then a back loop and then an open area and you finish. So we had to practice that. So we called it our race-specific fartlek. And we did it twice a year. And if you try a workout for whatever one of these you do, you're successful if you ask the kids when you're done, did that feel like it does when you run a good 800? Does it feel like when you run a good cross-country race or mile or 2 mile? So if the kids tell you, yes, that feels like it did when I ran in Peoria in September, or whatever the case may be. So we got to use our kids as a resource for us. So if it feels like the event we're training for, chances are we're doing a good job trying to figure that out. So and again, knowing our kids, we can figure these things out. And even within your group, if you have 2 or 3 kids that are similar, or like a 4x8, if they all have similar times, again, one kid may not have a distance background, one kid may be a good cross-country guy, one kid may be a wrestler, basketball, swimmer, whatever, then we can design individual race-specific workouts for that student. Okay? That's the idea. so that when we do go into the competitions, the kids know what this feels like. And like Joe Vigil said, from a physiological and a psychological standpoint, they have more practice at feeling like the way we want them to race. And I think that if we can feel that, if they can feel that, the more likely we are to succeed. I tend to prefer a jog recovery. Studies show that moving recovery increases, moving during recovery compared to standing, especially sitting, increases recovery. And obviously, you're doing more volume because distance runners need to run distance. So in my training in minutes, anytime that we can add a little bit more, we do that. Okay. Another thing, I prefer, depending on what you're doing, if you're doing date pace work or goal pace work, personally, I like doing things in sets. And I'd always heard about this. We've all seen workouts like this. But I really learned this from the fitness stuff and weightlifting, where you can get a higher quality if you do things in sets. So instead, and here's where I was talking about being a hypocrite. One of my signature workouts is 12 by 400. Here I'm telling you how 12 by 400s, there may be a better way to do it, but I'll explain why later. And it's called interval drift. And so if a kid does 12 400s, here are their 400-meter times. And the interesting thing about this, when I was typing this up, is on the same notebook, I had our split times from last year, from last track season, and I'll be damned if our race splits look pretty similar to that. And if you think about your athletes, and that's why did you slow down here? Why did you slow down there? When we've just done blindly, all right, today we're doing 12 400s. This is what we get. And if you do things in sets, instead of, you could break it down to 3 sets of 4 400s at goal pace, whatever the pace may be, instead of up and down, we are more likely to hit that split time. Again, and our body gets used to running at 75 seconds or 85 seconds or whatever you're shooting for if we break it down, if we break things down into sets. And I think that we can get more quality work if we do that. On the other hand, I talked about training, or we have to practice the way we want to race, but the truth is that more times than not, races do not go the way that we want them to. And there are things that are out of our control. So if some other kid goes out crazy, or some kid that your kid's afraid of goes out too slow, or the weather conditions, or whatever variables, a lot of times things don't go the way we want them to. And we need to be able to adapt to that. So obviously the only way to adapt to when things don't go the way we want them to is to practice that. So practice different scenarios and tell the kids. All right, now this is the way we want to race. This is the way we want to race. But today we're practicing this way so that if things don't work out the way we want them to, we are prepared for it. So I think telling them what we're doing. And here are examples of that. And the cross-country one I got from Coach Iverson, the girls' coach, because they ran this year in Minnesota. I don't know if some of you run that. Was it the GRIAC meet? And it was 2 years ago. Not this year. They went out way too fast. But before there was a race where they went out so slow they were buried and they were never able to catch up. So he came back and we talked constantly. He goes, they were out way too slow. They're afraid to. They tell me that they don't want to. They tell me it doesn't feel right. So it was a physical thing, but more importantly, it was a mental thing for them. So he was put in a situation where he had to practice that. So example, cross-country workout, he made them do a 400 really fast, 15-minute circuit workout, and then 2 400s fast. And that was tough for those girls, and it was a challenge for them, but they had that experience. And them having that experience in practice, obviously, is better than doing it at a race that's really important to us. So, so those are examples, and those are in the notes. At the bottom, the one thing I forgot to bring this weekend, there's an old book. It's called Winning Running by Bill Dillinger. Some of you might have it, and I know it's on Amazon because that's the only place I could buy it because I loaned it out and someone never gave it back to me, so I had to buy it again. They're called the Oregon Simulation Drills, and they break down different events. I'm sure you can find them online. But those are great things that are similar to this. All right, so and it's even if kids are 800, even if kids are 800 runner, but they don't have a distance background, so they're more of a 4.8 kid, and they really break it down. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, the Oregon Simulation Drills are awesome. They really are, depending on the type of athlete you have, so that you can practice that. And any of those, I think, are really good workouts, and they're challenging. They really are. Okay, but we do get a lot of volume there as well. Okay. Threshold training. Threshold training is critically important. Okay, again, if you're into the science of it, there's all kinds of terms. There's lactate threshold, there's aerobic threshold, there's this threshold, there's that threshold. I almost generically consider threshold is, whatever that race is. If it's a 2-minute or a 2:2800 or 2:3800, whatever it is, there's a threshold to that, and there's a feeling to it also. So, when I talk to our kids, we'll be in a classroom, I'll put a line down the middle of the chalkboard, and I'm like, all right, this is your threshold. And we need to train, you need to race at that threshold. And by training and racing at that threshold, when we get to the end of that race, if you're on that threshold, I can sprint 100 meters, 100 meters, whatever the case may be. So we need to practice at that threshold, which is goal pace, date pace, whatever, depending on where you are in the season and what event and what your, who your kids are. But we need to work on that threshold, and that's critically important. And I again talk about the end of the race, because a lot of times there are schools in our area, and I don't know if there's any Illinois people in here, or no suburban Illinois people in here. I don't think. I think I saw a coach from Rock Island, but otherwise, threshold training. There are schools in our area that they run really slow, or they run really fast. And some of those schools, they're not good in cross country, but they always have a good 4x8 in track. And we want to have both. Why not be really good in both, and be a program that's stuck in, well, this school has good 800 people, this school has good distance runners, and there's a separation. And I was always guilty of being more the distance-based person. And through learning more about the fitness stuff, that's what helped my 800 end of my coaching improve. So, doing threshold stuff is critically important. And the big thing with that is, here's where I'm kind of hypocritical. When I talk about interval drift, and my example workout was 12 400s, this is our bread and butter for distance running progression. I have done this for 18 years. And I have sheets on every good kid, bad kid. I compare our teams. I have so much stuff that we do this. This is heart rate 400s. And it doesn't have to be a 400. It can be in a park. It can be wherever the heck you want it to be. But we make them do 6 to 12 400s. Immediately after, they take a 10-second heart rate count if you don't have heart rate monitors. If you do, that's awesome. But so long as it's consistent, you're okay. And the kids get 1 minute of rest. And the deal with this is, compared to the interval drift workout, is I tell them, I give them a frame of reference there, that if they don't have a heart rate monitor, 10-second count, they got to be 26 to 30. And if they do, it's 156 to 180. Okay? So if they're too slow, the next one, they got to pick it up. All right? If your kid's over ambitious, or it's really hot, or they're sick, or they didn't eat lunch, or they didn't drink water, whatever, if their heart rate's too high, they have to back off. Okay? So that is threshold. So they're not bouncing all over the place like they would in that interval drift scenario. And by doing that, their body gets acclimated to doing that threshold, and we do that same workout later in the season, and it's amazing, the improvement. And it's individualized, and it's positive. So, this year we had freshman guys that were 85 seconds for their 400s, and then either because they grew, they developed, they weren't in shape, whatever the case may be, they were going from 85 seconds in the 400, or their repeat 400, or their repeat 400s. Maybe they were 78 or something like that. But that's huge. That's positive. And then that kid who has some talent, who didn't run in the summer with us, which they should have, and I've done this 18 years, I can tell that kid, all right, this guy that was the fourth man on Iowa State's cross country team this year, Tyler Germain. I can show him, hey, this was Tyler Germain who ran whatever year that was. He's a senior now at Iowa State. I can tell them, hey, Tyler ran 78. Now he's in the top 5 at Iowa State University. Now, why can't you do that? And it's positive, and it turns the kids on to the sport, hopefully. That's the goal. So so we just do it. We do things like that over and over again. So it's not, us versus Naperville Central, Neuqua Valley, York High School, whatever. It's our team, and it's the individual, showing improvement against themselves. Another one, 30 minutes of repeat 100s. Very similar idea. And especially, I love this one, if you get kids out for track that either they are 800 guys or you're trying to make them an 800, again, for guys, football, wrestling, whatever, girls, volleyball, whatever. Our girls team, one of their top girls was a volleyball player last year. And this is the type of thing that Coach Iverson did with them. Ooh, okay? So the girl, we'll get this right. The girl that played volleyball that was new to track but had a lot of talent, he did stuff like this, and she's running in Portland tomorrow, in the next meet. So a similar idea, but this one, you record heart rate 180. It's just 100 meters. This time of year, or if it snows, we'll go on our turf football field and do it. And it's very simple. We want to get them to a heart rate of 180, and then they hit the watch, and they time their recovery. And when they get to 120, I know that's really old school, less scientific about going to 120, but it's consistent. And then they record their recovery times, and we're doing 30 minutes of it. So the kids that get in better shape, they recover faster, they do more 100-meter repeats. But I want them at 180, so it's not a sprint. And again, and that's my job as a coach, to control them so that if they do it wrong, you can do this stuff any time of year, I think, or within a reason. So again, it's positive, it's threshold, it's something that we can record and the kids can get a lot out of. Okay, running circuits. I'm a huge fan of running circuits, and we use them in all different forms and fashions. Again, it's a warm-up, it's a workout. I do it a lot to simulate things. I had the cross-country example up there, but in the 800, I do this a lot, and I think the next slide may show that, where that third 200 on that 800-meter run is slow. And even though that third 200 is probably going to be slower than the other 200s, the kids need to get that feeling of, hey, it's the third 200. I got to kind of keep going at it, whatever the case may be. And by using running circuits, you can simulate things like that. So you can do 1 200, second 200, all right, now give me 10 burpees or 30 seconds jump rope or whatever, so they get the feeling where they have to put a little bit more into it. Or in cross country, there's very few hills, but there are man-made hills, or like sled hills. We have no hills at all, it's flat. There's a couple sled hills. We come off the sled hill, first thing we want to do is recover, because I haven't mentioned hills at all. First thing we want to do is recover and slow down. Okay, so that's why in a running circuit, you go up the hill, you come down the hill. It's the bottom of the hill where I'm going to make them do some extra work. Okay, you come down that hill, you're not going to be able to jog and take it easy. You now have to do X, Y, and Z exercise that I tell you to. So that's another way to use running circuits. And then the other thing that's on there is kids that are not so motivated, or you can't get them to do that kind of work. I love circuits because that's why in PE, as a PE teacher, the pacer test is so much more effective than the mile run because the kids only see, hey, it's only 20 meters, I get to stop and go again. When in reality, pacer test is harder than a mile run. Mile run, I can go as slow as I want. Pacer test, the pace is controlled. So mentally, the kids don't get that. So if you have kids that you kind of need to give them a boost or kick them and give them a boost, I love running circuits. Okay, and here's example circuits, and we use this a lot. again, depending where you're at, and my, and I'm personally getting ready for track, but I'm always thinking in cross country mode also, and I see the sport as all the same. It's just distance running. So in the fall we're racing cross country, in the winter and the spring we're racing track. In the winter time we train, in the summertime we train, and we try to get better. So I don't need to go through all that, but you as coaches can figure this stuff out, obviously, because you're all dedicated. That's why you're here. The dedicated coaches. Or some dedicated coaches, or less dedicated coaches, are not here. Okay, the long run, critically important. Distance runners need to run distance. If I am a basketball coach and I want to improve my free throws, I practice shooting free throws, or whatever the case may be. I got to do it. So as a distance runner, developing a distance runner, you have to do the long run. And I think the long run is as a runner, or as a former runner myself, and looking at my kids now, the long run's challenging, and it's something that you need to plan recovery for, in my opinion. Again, there are several schools that have had a lot of success where they control their long run, and I told you that we do ours on Monday. Years ago, because that's what I did in college, where we did our long runs on Sunday. And when I started coaching, the kids, you're on your own. Go do 90, all right? But there were a lot of things that happened with that. Kid that felt good started racing, hammering. Some kids did them at 7 o'clock in the morning. Some kids did them at 7 o'clock at night. And there were all these things going on, okay? And in addition to that, depending what we did on Saturday or what they did all weekend, Friday, whatever, running related and not, Sunday, they need to recover. And when they come to practice on Monday, they need to be ready to go with whatever your training week is going to have them do. So I think the long run, I believe, and you may disagree, which is fine, and if it works for you, that's wonderful, but I think there needs to be an easy day after the long run. You look at the University of Colorado, who won the NCAA guys program. They do Magnolia Road, which is a whole other animal because it's hilly and it's 9,000 feet altitude or whatever the case may be. But they always have a recovery day after the long run. And again, in our area, some coaches that are good friends of mine, they get in this cycle where they're racing on Saturday, they're doing their long run on Sunday, they're doing a workout on Monday, they have a Tuesday meet, and they say, well, we're just training through the Tuesday meet. So they had hard efforts Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So there's 4 challenging days in a row. And like I said, physiologically, even if you're going slower, I consider the long run challenging. So, and again, some people that are really good friends of mine, they do that. So they'll go 4 days in a row, and then and then Wednesday maybe they'll go easy. Thursday they'll do like threshold or something, and then race on Saturday. And what happens is, it's just not 1 week. This is what we do. Stop. The history of what we did doesn't affect us, and then it's the next week. Fatigue is cumulative. And again, tomorrow I'll talk about sleep and nutrition and that sort of stuff. But when you do that, those are the teams, and like some people that are my really good friends, they do that in early season. Man, you don't want to race against them. They'll wipe you out. But then you see week by week, they kind of slow down, and it's sad. So the long run's important. Depending if we raced on Saturday or not, I like to have them go for it, or not go for it, but have a nice rhythm. That's one thing as a runner. I thought that I got better when we did the long runs and we were clicking. That really feels good, and I want my athletes to have that, but you got to let them recover from that. Okay? So depending on what we're doing, if we had a race, the long run's slow. If we don't, and we're just training, sometimes the long run can be faster. Question? Sorry. Easy days, I think it's in there, maybe like a 15-minute, real easy dynamic warm-up. So maybe like what we did, just like skipping and like some real easy dynamic flexibility work, and then foam rolling. And later today I have baseballs and lacrosse balls, and I'm in acupuncture and all sorts of stuff like that, and yoga. But then that runs easier. So maybe it's a 15-minute dynamic warm-up, and depending on the kid, 40, 45 hour run, depending on the athlete. And if they do that, once they get used to that, then with a Wednesday they're ready to go with some good work. Hopefully that helps. Okay. So, and the long run, pretty much keep it throughout the season. I back off just a little bit the sectional week, and a little bit the state week, and that's it. Otherwise, I try to keep it all the way through, because again, distance runners need to run distance, and that goes into 10. Okay, perfect. End of the season sharpening. I don't like the word, again, from my own personal experience. I've never liked the term tapering. I think of swimmers, and swimmers I deal with in my fitness work is that they want to do nothing. All right, I mean literally nothing. If you know swimming people, all right, and maybe because of what swimmers do and the volume of work they can do, it's good for them and it's psychological for them. But I've seen so many times with runners that if we taper, okay, that means we're stepping off, and if we're stepping off, it's a mental thing, and then when we try to step back on, sometimes it doesn't go. And the other part is that if we taper, we have to keep I think that might be the next slide, but we want to keep the components of training. So we obviously want to do sharpening speed work, faster than race pace work, but not so fast where they can't recover as a team and as an individual. But we still need to have that threshold component in there. And we still need to have that distance component in there. And at the end of the season, again, depending on the athlete, depending on their fitness, their general fitness level, and their running experience level, how much you back off on them. If there's something missing from their training, that can be the thing that's missing from their race at the state meet or sectional meet or whatever, and they feel flat. And again, unfortunately, I've coached kids, that, coach, I was flat, I looked terrible. And again, that might be mental, but it might be physical. And unfortunately, we've probably had because at the end of the season, we're naturally doing a little bit more work that's faster than race pace. And when we go to that end a little bit, we naturally drop our volume a little bit. So I don't tell the kids we're dropping volume. We're doing it, but I don't tell them that, because I don't want them to think we're backing off. Because the mental, and again, I'll talk about that tomorrow, the mental part of that scares me, as a coach. I hate it. And, a lot of times when runners do really well, when they're feeling good, when they're clicking, they're training hard. So the mental side of training hard and feeling good, some kids can't handle backing off. I backed off. I hate it. I don't, the kid will tell you that. I hate it. I don't like it. And if I hate it and I don't like it, and now you're going to run the most important race of the season, that's a tough thing to deal with. Okay. 56 minutes. All right. I've got like 4 minutes left. If you ever have any questions, I'm a junkie with this kind of stuff, and so please feel free to email me anytime. And like I said at the beginning, if you or any general questions I can answer while we're here. Oh, that was a lot. I hope it wasn't too much. Yes.
Back off your long runs on 800 guys. Back off your long runs on 800 guys compared to 2 milers earlier or not?
Yes. Depending on the background of the 800 kid, their distance run may not. We'll back off a little bit, but we'll still do a longer one. The 800 kids, that's a whole nother. A specific 800 kid, that's a different animal. So we'll do like a med ball warm up and stuff like that. We'll still do that, but we will back off the volume a little bit. So it is different, 800 to 3200 or whatever the case may be. So yes, we back off a little bit, and maybe the 800 kid you can substitute it with something else, so they still feel like they're getting work involved. Does that answer your question? I hope. Something else? Well, my session tomorrow talks a lot about that, but quickly, really because of lack of sleep, we tend to do one morning session. And honestly, when you're getting to numbers, and then tomorrow I'll talk about my team policy and this and that. When you get to big numbers like that, I have some great seniors that are really, really slow runners, but they're the greatest guys in the world, and I wouldn't trade them for anything. But we all have kids that come out for the team for the wrong reason, and that's that's a big thing about my talk tomorrow. But basically, as a coach, I feel that if kids are skipping practice and kids tell you, Coach, I'm not going to come to practice today because I'm doing this or that, I think that can be something that's a cancer to your program and bring things down. And again, I'm going to talk about this tomorrow, but the great thing is I have two awesome assistants that the one thing I hate about having numbers like that is I feel like the first month of my season is dealing with kids that treat our sport as an intramural program compared to an athletic program. So we always have our athletes versus our intramural kids. And again, I'll talk about this tomorrow, but even worse, especially in Naperville, it's our athlete parents versus our intramural parents. And that's basically what happens. Kids miss practice. We talk about it a lot. I start the season. Every week I talk to them. I'll say, hey, if cross country is not the thing for you, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. Doesn't mean you're a bad guy. Doesn't mean we don't like you. But in tomorrow's talk, we talk about being a good person and working hard and being responsible and being mature. That if cross country or track is not the thing for you, show that maturity and come up and say, hey, coach, cross country is really not, or track is really not the thing for me. I don't want to commit to Wednesday morning practices or Saturday practices or whatever the case may be. So it's more attrition because of numbers and lack of commitment. So yes. Absolutely. Which workouts specifically? Oh, all of them. In the notes, we mix. We do threshold work. Real quick. I mean, throughout for Tuesdays, dynamic, easy. Wednesday, we do the morning challenging warm up workout. We do threshold work, and then on Saturdays we're racing or we're doing a hard circuit or we're doing some work like that. If you have the clinic notes or go online for the clinic notes, one thing I did was, and I didn't put it up here, but what I did was I have a preseason weekly schedule, an example weekly schedule for 800-mile, 2-mile cross-country runners, a mid-season example training schedule for 8, 16, 1200, or I'm sorry, 3200 cross-country, and same thing for end of season. So I hope that answers your question. But it's in, I guess, like I said, in the notes I did, again, early season, mid-season, late season examples for all 4 of those. So, any other general questions? All right. I think I'm right on an hour. So thank you all of you so much. You have questions, please ask.